Alright, so I forgot to turn on recording during class, but I'm going to re-record this lecture so that you know how to set up the second part of the exercise. Once you've taken your photographs, we need to get them ready to be sent to a printer, to be printed both in color and also in black and white. Now there's a couple of things to remember. Whenever you take a photograph with a regular camera, it's going to be in RGB color mode. If you're going to send it to a printer, the printer is working in CMYK. Literally the difference is RGB uses light to mix colors, CMYK is going to use pigments or actual atoms to mix colors. When you mix RGB, red, green, and blue, together, it's going to make white light. But if you mix pigments together, it's going to get darker. And so that's the difference between a additive or a subtractive method of working to prepare your artwork. So the first thing we need to do is to prepare this to get ready for a color printer. Now the easiest thing you can do to change your color mode is, of course, you can go to Image, down to Mode, and choose CMYK Color. The thing about it is, depending on the printer you send it to, not all CMYK is alike. Depends on the printer that you're using. Is it a toner or is it ink? Is it a Epson printer or a Canon printer? Is it going to be a large sheet-fed or a web-fed printer as well? All of those handle ink differently, and the type of paper you have handles ink differently as well. So to ensure that your photograph will be printed properly on a certain type of printer, on a certain type of paper, we need to change the printer's color profile. Here's how we're going to do this. Every paper manufacturer and most color printer manufacturers will have what's called an ICC color profile you can download. For this exercise, we're going to do the Moab ICC profiles. Do a search for it. Usually the very top one will come up. And this is for Moab paper. Moab paper does a variety of different styles, a variety of different thicknesses of paper, and it'll show you how to install the profile. We're actually going to select the Epson printer and then choose the style of printer that you have. Each one's going to handle ink a little bit differently. We're going to do the 1188, and then we need to choose the type of paper that we're doing. Different types of paper will handle ink a little bit differently. For us, we're going to do the laser luster. So when I click on this, give it just a second, it'll download an actual file, a .icc file. This has a specific set of information that tells my computer how I want it to save the files and manage the colors that are a part of it. So we'll hit save. It shouldn't take too long to download. Here it is right here. I'll drag it to our desktop. This ICC file, if I was to double click it in Macintosh, will open up and it'll show you the information that goes with it. You can see some of the metadata and see how it handles colors of a file. To be honest, I've never had to change this. I don't really know what it's actually documenting. But if I need to install it on my computer, here's how to do that. We need to find the hard drive, open it up, and in the Libraries folder, look for your color sync. Now these aren't in alphabetical, so let's change over to here. There we go. Here's my color sync, and here's my profiles. So I'm just going to open my profiles and drag this into the folder. Now since my computer is password protected, I do need to authenticate it. Yours may not need to be done. All that is typing in your password. Now that it's added to the profile, I can actually apply that profile to my CMYK print. So let's go to Edit. All the way at the bottom, we're going to convert to profile. And this will bring up our profile settings. Since we were working in RGB before, this is what we need to change it to. So from RGB, when I click on this, this will give you a variety of different predefined profiles. Some of these are international standards for Japan, for the United States, whether it's on a sheet-fed press or a web press. You can control the amount of dot gain. Keep scrolling down. Eventually we'll find, there it is, the Moab laser luster profile. With this, we'll say OK. Now it's been changed and assigned to that. That's all we need to do. From here, we're going to save our file. Go to File and Save As. The type of file format most printers like isn't a JPEG. A JPEG will compress your image. Instead, we want a lossless TIFF format. Also, we can embed the color profile we're working with. In this case, there's our Moab profile. I'll save it to the top, but I'm going to add the word color to this. And then hit save. There are some more options. We're going to keep them exactly the same for now and say OK to that. So now I've got a color TIFF saved along with my JPEG as well. This is what I would send to a printer. Now if I'm working with a newspaper, additionally I need to send some cut line information for this particular image. So to add cut line information, we're going to save it to the metadata. You can go to File, down to File Info, and this is where I can add extra bits of information to the photograph so that when I send it to the publisher or the printer, they'll know exactly where to find it. I don't have to send a separate email. For this exercise, we're just going to change the author, type in your name, give it a description. The description can be the who, what, when, where, and why. So, at this hockey game, James checked John. Whatever it needs to say to define what's inside of here. Remember, who, what, when, where, and why. If you want to add keywords, you can. This is really better for sending something online, but we do want to change the copyright status to copyrighted since you took the photograph. Once you're done, you can say OK. And I'm going to save this again. I should have done this before I actually created the color TIFF. Now it's saved to the document. The second thing we need to do is to convert this to a black and white TIFF. Just as you would convert a CMYK, you can go to Mode, choose Grayscale. It's going to ask you, are you sure you want to discard the information? We'll discard it. Now it's a true black and white. As with other types of printing, depending on the type of paper you have, some of these darker colors will actually show up very, very dark. And what's happening is the ink is absorbing into the paper and it's spreading out. Imagine if you took a marker and placed it on top of a piece of paper, right? It would start to bleed into the paper. This is called dot gain. You can manually adjust for dot gain by going up to Image, down to Adjustment, and changing up your levels. This will give us our histogram. It's the middle histogram, this midtones, that we really want to adjust and work with. If you've ever seen an image in a newspaper come out too dark, it's because they didn't adjust the dot gain levels to it. What I like to do is to pull this up, and there's really no set amount. I pull it until it starts to become just too washed out. I'm starting to lose some of the details. Right here would actually be just the right amount. If it's too much, then it tends to get too dark. So for newspaper, right about there, we'll say OK. Now I've manually adjusted my image for dot gain, and I can save this as a grayscale. Again, we'll go to File and Save As. In this case, we're going to keep it as a TIFF. We're going to change color to gray. And also notice that my color profile has been changed to dot gain 20%. How'd that happen? I'll show you that in a second. We'll say Save and say OK to that. Now I've got two different versions saved to my desktop, a color and a grayscale. You're going to do this for 5 of the photographs that you took during today, any of the 5 that worked well from the setup that we did. Now let's go back to why it chose 20% as my dot gain. If we go back to Edit and down to Color Settings, this will bring up the color settings for Photoshop that I'm working in. Notice that these are the default workspaces. If it's RGB, this was the default RGB that it will use, amongst others. Same way for CMYK, here's the grayscale. When I converted it to that, by default it shows a dot gain of 20% from here. That's why it automatically changed to dot gain 20%. You could go back and change it to whatever you want, but these are the default color settings. We'll say OK to that. Once you've done 5 of the images, so you should have 5 color and 5 gray, save them to a folder. You will have 10 total, and then compress this folder. Save it as a zip file. Now this zip file is going to be too big to upload to Moodle. So what I want you to do is to bring it to class, and I'll save it to my computer and check it from there. All right.